It's time to get to it. It's the Elite Eight, Auburn versus Michigan State. Let's talk about it right here inside Lobtown.
The Auburn Express. You are now listening to the War Report, Lobtown Podcast. With your boy Ike Jones.
Yes, sir. Lobtown right here, part of the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report. Today brought to you by the good folks over at BetUS TV. Of course, you want to make sure that if you want to get some more information about all of the markets and all of the betting odds that are out there, you head over to BetUS TV. BetUSTV.com is your place for all of that. Auburn versus Michigan State is definitely going to be there, as well as the rest of the Elite Eight matchups that are out there. But any sport, any market, go over to BetUS TV. Make sure that you lock in with them. Let's talk a little bit about, before we get into the specifics of this matchup, Auburn versus Michigan State. I want to talk a little bit about the game versus Michigan. Auburn versus the state of Michigan this weekend, apparently, is what we're doing right now. But the matchup, sloppy in the first half. Bruce Pearl said last night, if Auburn's going to play like they did offensively, meaning they're going to have 15 turnovers versus Michigan, then Michigan State's going to turn them over 25 times in that game, right? So you're going to have a difficult time making sure that you've got offense out there to be able to score points if you're going to be as sloppy as you were, because this Michigan State defense is a better defense than what Michigan was. So definitely need to take care of the basketball much better than you did in this game last night. But in terms of that game, of course, you had the dynamic play of Denver Jones to Todd Pettiford, specifically in the second half of that game, to be able to take Auburn across the finish line. But you also saw a resurgence of Janai Broom as a scorer in that game. He had a double-double in the game, was really dominant on the glass. You're going to need to see that again versus Michigan State, because Michigan State doesn't have the same kind of front line. Their athletes are going to be their guards and their wing players. So Michigan's going to have to throw some different things out there. Michigan State, going to have to throw some different things out there defensively than what Michigan was able to do to try to keep Janai Broom off of the paint, out of the paint, and have him be a less effective scorer. But today we got an opportunity to listen to both of the teams and coaches talk about this matchup. And one of the things that Coach Bruce Pearl said that I thought was interesting, and a lot of the guys who were a part of the media corps for that were here covering Michigan State found it potentially, I won't say bulletin board material, but they did seem to think it was a little laughable. Coach Bruce Pearl said that he is coaching his team, or he's got the mentality that he's going into this game as the underdogs, right? Even though they're the number one overall seed in this matchup. Michigan State is the team that has all of the pedigree. They're the ones that have been here multiple times. When you're talking about Auburn as a team, they haven't been to the number of Elite Eights that Tom Izzo, just by himself as a coach, has been to. So he's coaching his team to feel like you are still the ones that have something to prove in this matchup, despite being the number one overall seed. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see how that mentality transpires or goes forward into this game, particularly when you talk about that with Tom Izzo. He's like, I don't care about all of that. Listen, man, whether I'm the underdog or if that makes him, basically he's like, if that makes him feel better, then, hey, we can be, the team that's not the underdog. You guys can be the underdogs if that makes you feel better. So Tom Izzo's not really buying into it. He specifically was like, listen, man, I've been conned too many times to fall for a new con, right? Like, you're not going to talk yourself into being overconfident going into this game. And that's what makes Tom Izzo a really good coach, man. He's going to get his team prepared, and the rhetoric leading up to it doesn't matter. But it's clear, and he said it multiple times, Coach Bruce Pearl coaches better when he feels as if he is the underdog in a matchup. So he is going into this trying to, more than really his players, himself, be more in a comfortable space as a coach. So definitely looking forward to seeing how they embrace that underdog mentality and keep their hunger, because that's a thing that people have questioned about this Auburn team, whether or not they still have the same hunger. I think a lot of the hunger that you saw from Auburn early in this season had a lot to do with the doubt that was happening. And now you see, they're going into these games in the tournament with the Doubt Us t-shirts on. They want to recapture that hunger of people not feeling as if they belong there. Right now, you're the number one seed, but nobody feels like you belong. Everyone's saying if there's the first number one seed to go out in this tournament, it's going to be Auburn. And Auburn's not going to make it out of the first weekend. Auburn's going to get beat in the first round matchup. They've defeated a couple of those things. Still, all one seeds left in this. Can Auburn continue to win and not be that first one seed out in this tournament? Going into this game in the Elite Eight matchup, this is going to be the test. I think for myself is the first matchup where I'm like, these two teams are a little bit more evenly matched in terms of athleticism, in terms of physicality. Can Auburn get over the hump against a team that they really don't overpower from a physicality and athleticism standpoint? So it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. The next portion of this that I think is going to be a big factor in this game, and both coaches talked about it, and that's the free throw line. Michigan State has been a team that has doubled up their opponents in number of free throw attempts in these last two matchups in the NCAA tournament. And Auburn has been a team over the season that has sent teams to the free throw line quite a bit. Michigan State's going to try to get Auburn in foul trouble in this game and get to the free throw line a lot. And Coach Pearl talked about kind of the differences and how they approach those teams, because what happens a lot is when you're in a matchup where the bigs are going to be dominant, like it was with Auburn versus Michigan, is that the physicality is expected down low. So you don't get as many whistles happening in those instances because you're expecting to see guys bang into one another. And a lot of that stuff that's happening at the rim, bang, bang plays, walling up, being vertical, all that kind of stuff, that happens. But when it's guards out front and they're fighting over screens, or they're trying to be physical as guys are driving downhill, you tend to see more whistles in those types of games. That was evident in this game versus Ole Miss. Again, Michigan State doubling up the number of free throw attempts that Ole Miss was able to get. And Ole Miss, a team that's very perimeter oriented in the way that they play defense, it made it difficult for Ole Miss to sustain the level of defensive play that they had, because they had to guard differently. They had to defend differently. Can Auburn's guards match up well with the strength of Michigan State, which is their guard and wing play? Keep those guys from getting downhill. Michigan State, not a great three-point shooting team. They'll take the free opportunities that they have and they'll knock them down because they're big shot makers. But who is going to be the team that's going to be able to play their style of physical perimeter defense and maintain themselves in the game out of foul trouble? And then conversely, as the guards for Auburn, who have proven to be tough two makers, can they continue to make tough twos in a game where Michigan State's going to run them off of the 3-point line? Bruce Pearl said this specifically. He's like, Michigan State's not going to let Auburn beat them from the 3-point line. So they need to be able to make tough twos in this game. So the physicality in the perimeter and the free throw line and how this game is going to be officiated early, I think is going to determine kind of the direction of this game and whose defensive style is going to prevail in this one. Then you get to that next level of this, and you talk about 6 of their top scorers are all wing and guard players, right? Like, they don't score a lot from their bigs. What they do is they have that athleticism on the boards, but they're not really using that as a scoring threat. And so the depth of the backcourts, the depth of the wing players is going to be important in this game. And this is going to be one of those games where I feel like Auburn is going to be at deficit. I think that Auburn had the better guards in the first 3 matchups so far. I don't know that they have the superior guards in this. They have got, this is not disrespect to Auburn's guards. Todd Pettiford playing a marvelous game off of the bench. Denver Jones, one of the best two-way guards in America. You've got Miles Kelly, who's been on a slump these last couple of games after having a really dynamic first game versus Alabama State. Been slumping, particularly on the offensive end, still having great effort on the defensive end. Been in a little bit of foul trouble, but again, we're going back to that. Can he stay out of foul trouble and keep himself on the floor to even be a threat to shoot from the outside? Because that changes the dynamic of how you play. And then Chad Baker-Mazara, who had a really great second half in both of the first 2 games. Not as effective in this game. I think he struggled a little bit more in the first half, but still played really good defense. Can that that quartet of guys be able to stay within this game and keep themselves in a position where they're putting pressure back on those Michigan guards and wing players to have to defend well, and then defend them well on the opposite end. I think the guards are going to be so crucial in this game, and who's setting the pace, who's setting the tempo. We'll talk about tempo and pace here in just a minute, but who is establishing the defensive way that this game is going to progress. Michigan State struggled a little bit early in that game, and then intermittently throughout the game with some of the pressure that Ole Miss was applying to them. And they're not a team that turns the ball over a lot. So can Auburn reproduce that? That's something that the Michigan State players talked about. Is like, if Auburn watched that game versus Ole Miss, they might say, okay, we can get out and pressure these guys. So they're going to be more cognizant of that going into this game, trying to stay away from some of the silly mistakes that they made in that game versus Ole Miss and the turnovers that happened. So looking forward to seeing how Auburn is able to, from the guard and the wing standpoint, compete with a team in Michigan State that is very guard and wing oriented. And then I said I was going to talk about the tempo, and this is a team in Michigan State that wants to go out and run. Coach Izzo talked about his team running even off of missed shots, not just turnovers, but getting rebounds and getting out in transition really before Auburn's defense can get set. So I'm expecting for this to be an up-tempo type of game. The players expect that from Michigan State. Talked about how Auburn, can play with pace and play with tempo. These two teams are very similar into the pace and in the tempo that they have. Not teams that really that's a focal point for them, because they're not transition, get out and go off of live ball turnovers teams. It's not like Ole Miss. Ole Miss is a team that's what they do, is they try to turn you over live ball, get over fast break points is a big portion of how they get their points. Auburn's fine with playing different styles of basketball, and they don't mind a half court game. But they will push the pace and get out in tempo if necessary to try to stop going against some of the better set defenses, and Michigan has a really good set defense. So it's going to be important both teams focus on not just the offensive glass. This is why Michigan State actually is not a great offensive rebounding team. They're good, not great as an offensive rebounding team. But it's because they focus so much on transition defense and trying to get back and make sure that they're not giving up easy opportunities. So take your shot, but make sure that you're getting back. They're going to be doing a lot of that in this game, I think. And so it's going to be incumbent upon Auburn, particularly those guards, to make sure that they're slowing down the transition, even off of misses, right? So if you miss and you don't get the board, you got to get back. You have to make sure that you're guarding against the pace and the tempo that they're going to ultimately try to put out there against you, with the way that Michigan State likes to play offensively with those guards. And because they're going to deploy what will be essentially smaller lineups against Auburn, they're going to try to play a little small ball and really try to utilize their quickness to get inside of passing lanes and really get out into the transition game a little bit more than the teams. Alabama State was a team that plays in transition. Creighton doesn't really play in transition very much, but they are an early shot team, right? They're going to try to get shots up early in the shot clock. They're not going to be a slow, methodical team. So Auburn's seen a little bit of everything so far in this tournament. Team like Michigan that likes to get out in transition. They want to push the pace. Auburn did a really good job of making sure that they made Michigan uncomfortable when they were trying to do that. And then you ended up getting some sloppy play even in when they had the advantages in transition. Auburn was able to turn that into an advantageous situation for them on the defensive end. So again, from a defensive standpoint, Auburn really needs to be focused on stopping transition and fast break points in this game, because it feels as if that's going to be a focus for Michigan State in this game. Last thing I want to talk about here in terms of this game, and I'll try to get you guys some film. Green Name Game, make sure you guys stay locked in with your boy. I'm gonna try to get y'all a little film before the game happens tomorrow. I don't know, we got a lot of stuff that we got to do. Maybe we'll do a watch along with some of the games tonight. I'm not sure, we'll figure that out. But what I do want to talk about is the defense of Michigan State versus Auburn and Janai Broom. I think because of the matchups, Tom Izzo said in this last game versus Ole Miss, they didn't play some of their bigger interior players. So those guys are going to be fresh and rested, ready for Janai Broom, Dylan Cardwell in this game. That was kind of a strategic thing. He said because of the matchups that they didn't feel like they had advantageous matchups with the quickness of what Ole Miss was going to do on the exterior. I think that they're going to try to deploy some of those guys. So it's going to be interesting to see how they decide to guard Janai Broom. I have a feeling that what they're going to attempt to do is say, we've got enough bodies we can throw at Janai Broom. If he scores 40, fine, but we can't let Denver Jones, Miles Kelly, Tahad Pettiford, Chad Baker-Mazara beat us from the exterior. We feel like we've got enough good exterior defensive players that we don't need to double Janai Broom. Cool, let him get off, but those other guys can't get off. I feel like they're going to try to play in that manner, and so it's going to be incumbent upon Auburn to do something they have not done so far in this tournament, and that's be crisp with their execution, because they're not going to get a lot of easy looks from an over-rotating defense. I think that this team is going to, in Michigan State, try to play as honest as they can against Janai Broom until they can't anymore. And so they're going to make Janai Broom earn it on the interior and try to just be solid defensively with him. And if you make a great shot, you make a great shot. I think that's going to be the mentality defensively that they're going to take into this game, not try to come and double team him a lot. Or if they do double team him, there's ways that other teams have deployed that double team coming from the weak side, where he's going to his he's open up to the floor, but they know he wants to turn back over that right shoulder and get to his left hand. So that's where the double team would come late from the baseline side of that. So that's something that I anticipate Michigan State to do quite a bit in this game. So I'm looking forward to seeing how Auburn prepares for that. Short turnaround for a team that has the kind of defensive capabilities that each of these teams do. It's going to be interesting to see how those scouts have progressed and how well those teams are able to kind of employ those scouts into their game plans going into this game. Looking forward to a great matchup in this one. And again, I'll try to have some more film stuff for you guys, because I do want to talk about some of the things I felt like worked well versus Michigan. Very different defensive team in Michigan State, so you probably won't see a lot of those same things employed, but I'll try to get as much of that for you guys. But I'm going to get out of here. I want to hear from you all. Give me score predictions. What are you expecting to see? Who's the X factor going to be in this game? You guys know, for me, it's got to be guys. I think Chad Baker-Mazara, if I can give you my X factor right here in this game, Chad Baker-Mazara, and I've talked about him the last two and how it's taken a couple of games from the big shooting matchup. I think Miles Kelly has a bounce back game in this one. He shoots a higher proficiency from the 3-point line, but Chad Baker-Mazara is going to be my X factor in this one, because he is the Swiss Army knife guy that can do all of the things necessary against a team that plays so well on the perimeter. Chad Baker-Mazara needs to have a big game in this one, needs to be proficient, particularly in the mid-range, and had his shot selection and his decisions in the open floor. Didn't like the behind the back pass thing he tried to do in this last. Decisions in the open floor, shot selection, just taking care of the basketball, and then how well, because he did seem to be struggling to move a little bit laterally in this last game, how well is he going to be able to defend out there on the perimeter versus these athletes that Michigan State's going to roll out there. Anyway, I'm out of here. Make sure you guys share this content with somebody. Make sure you go ahead and like this video. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already. We'll be back at you with more great content the next time. Till then, and as always, War Eagle.